A young woman I talked to said, I feel like I'm digging my own grave. I am creating AI agents that actually do what I do.
AI isn't coming, it's actually already here, but most CEOs are still treating it like a tech initiative, not the strategic transformation that it truly is. So in this episode, I sit down with Heather Jerrehian, tech founder, investor, and VP of AI at ServiceNow, to uncover what leaders are getting wrong about AI, how it's redefining the workforce, and why your leadership approach must change before your business does. What are the biggest misconceptions that leaders have about AI?
Biggest misconception that CEOs have is that AI is not just another IT initiative. For me, AI is both an enabler and a disruptor. So it's not an either or. CEOs really need to foster a culture where AI is seen as a partner, not as a replacement. Companies that thrive in an AI era won't necessarily be the ones with the best technology. They will be the ones with the most adaptable leaders and workforce. This is the billion-dollar question. There are companies who are using this as a cost takeout. Now, my argument is...
So, hi everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the World Class Leaders. So, today I'm really excited to have with me Heather Jerrehian, is an entrepreneurial futurist and investor who has driven innovation and go-to-market strategies for startups and Fortune 500 companies for over 2 decades. She's the co-author of Sail to Scale, so steer your startup clear of mistakes from launch to exit. So guiding entrepreneurs in navigating the complexities of business scaling. So as a serial founder and tech executive, she has led turnarounds and unprecedented speed, scale, 10x growth, and engineered profitable exits, including the acquisition of each by ServiceNow, quoted as a New York Stock Exchange, under her leadership as the CEO. Currently, Heather is building next generation AI solutions and workforce intelligence products as the VP of the AI product management at ServiceNow. So, as a COO at Entrain, her leadership was also instrumental in doubling revenues and turning losses into profits within 18 months. She built a 25 million division of Drop, launching over 100 proprietary products across hardware, electronics, clothing, and accessories. Heather is also a founding limited partner of the venture capital firm How Women Invest and has been recognized as a woman of influence by the Silicon Valley Business Journal. So, Heather, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Andrea, thanks so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you for being here. So, look, amazing successes, amazing story. I mean, so exciting to have a conversation with you today. And by the way, for framing, we're not just talking about startup here. We're gonna really have a conversation about the world of leadership, the world of CEOs, and most importantly, what's the implication of artificial intelligence, given your experience, and also, your meaningful expertise inside of the topic. But as I always start with this conversation, I would like just to get a very quick answer to the question I asked to all the guests when they come to the show is, what does it mean to be a CEO, given also your role, in modern times?
So it's such a great question. So I think being a CEO today means leading with confidence, clarity, and conviction when there's so much uncertainty. So for me, it's about balancing vision and execution, being able to embrace AI, the shifting workforce dynamics, and ensuring that people and technology are driving value together. So I would say the best CEOs have the characteristics of being adaptable, data driven, and most importantly, are deeply human in their leadership.
Yeah, that's something that we definitely share, and I totally agree with that. Being human as a leader. And to me, that is a great starting point. So let's talk a little bit about AI. So, one of the dilemma of many CEOs I speak with, I'm sure that has been your experience too, is the AI an opportunity or threat? I mean, there are so many, comments, insights, point of view, perspective about it. Because AI is transforming industry, as we know. Yeah, many CEOs, at least that's our experience, are still unsure about how to embrace it without disrupting the workforce. So, from your specific perspective and experience, what are the biggest misconceptions that leaders have about AI, and what's the right way for CEOs to think about AI's role in their business?
Yeah, so I mean, honestly, we're in such a unique time right now. I mean, a once in a generation moment. And often people are coming to me saying, is AI going to take my job? And for me, AI is both an enabler and a disruptor. So it's not an either or. And I think the biggest misconception that CEOs have is that AI is not just another IT initiative. It is about reshaping business models, redefining job roles, and really shifting how decisions are getting made. So the real challenge isn't the technology itself, it's the mindset shift required to lead AI powered world. So I think, what I say to people, the right way to think about AI is a force multiplier. So it is enhancing human potential, it is improving efficiency, and it's unlocking new growth opportunities. So I think CEOs need to move past the fear of unknown disruption and really focus on AI as that enabler of a strategic advantage. So it means investing in AI fluency in all levels of an organization, rethinking, workforce capabilities, and really, most importantly, is making sure your AI is aligned with business goals. So not just adopting
Mm.
it for the sake of it, but really thinking through with your leadership team, what does this mean for our organization? And also thinking about where is our organization today and where does it need to go in the future? So it's to me, it's kind of this dynamic shape shifting that's happening within organizations.
When in your experience, I mean, what I notice is, and we'll come back to this with you, especially when it comes to aligning with your team. But when it comes to bringing AI in a conversation, what I experienced personally in many conversations at the top table in organizations has been, I mean, AI is becoming kind of a buzzword. I mean, they're saying, "Oh, we need to embrace it. We need to really, leveraging AI." But the reality then they don't know how to do it. It becomes a very superficial conversation. So tell me a little bit more about, how can you can bring real practical implementation and usage of AI in your organization.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right, like, AI is the buzzword. It kinda reminds me back to the dot-com era when everything was a dot com and, like, it just got overused, and I think what's happening for a lot of organizations is they know they need to adopt this technology, but again, they're not really sure how and where. Um, and like I said, maybe the IT org has a very good vision of it, but the part that they're not thinking about is like, how is this impacting day to day work? And this is really where HR and other leaders need to come to the table to have a discussion. It follows some research that I've done on, in terms of the day to day work, what gets augmented, what gets automated. And so, how does that impact someone's role? And I think this is a really important discussion because, everyone's talking about agentic AI. AI is kind of the newest topic and deploying AI agents in your organization. And I think that's great. I think that's going to bring a lot of productivity. Um, but what people aren't thinking about is, okay, when you deploy these agents, what are the roles and responsibilities of that digital agent? What is the role and responsible of the human worker? And how do you sort of reconcile that? And once you have visibility to that, what do you do with the time that gets freed up for your human workers? Right. So, how do you maybe expand their role? How do you upskill them? How do you maybe redeploy them into other work? And so I think these are really important things for leaders to be thinking about, because it's not just deploying this technology. There really are big implications across the organization. And then you also have this challenge of what is the responsible, ethical way to be using this? What is the data governance? And one of the things that I and my colleagues are sort of thinking about is as all these different organizations, so mine and other organizations are deploying these AI agents, what happens in an enterprise when you've got different groups using AI agents and all of them sort of, you know, run into each other? Like,
Right.
what's the decision-making governance there? And how do you know which one should go forward versus which one should, do a handoff? I mean, there's so much complexity to this, and I think we're kind of at the tip of the iceberg of kind of understanding what it means. But I think the most important thing is to get started with it, and really have, like I said, a clear vision from the top of what does it mean in the organization, and really like helping to bring people along on this journey. I think that is the human part of this. I think is really important for it to be successful.
Oh, totally, totally. I can't agree more. You were just saying about, one of the area for the maximum impact on AI for organization is definitely productivity, or at least is one of the key areas. And when it comes to productivity, we normally tend then to think about the workforce and how people work together and what is terms of resources the organization. So there is all in term, all conversation happening in many organizations, especially the big one. They definitely go through personal experience. They go through this lengthy, um, painful sometimes
Yeah.
workforce planning processes when they're trying to figure out how many resources really they need, right?
Yeah.
Just to
Yes.
simplify this. You have an interesting view, the four-dimensional workforce. So
Yes.
what is the four-dimensional workforce? So let the audience understand what's your view about that.
Sure. So that's exactly right. I developed a concept called the four dimensional workforce, and it's really about capturing the evolving nature of talent in today's AI enabled world. So it's, pushing beyond just like the traditional talent management by recognizing there's like four critical dimensions that we need to look at. So the first dimension is where most companies are at. They really only know the names and titles of their employees. There's really not a whole lot of tech
Mm,
intelligence. Maybe there's pockets of it in the organization, but it's not fully integrated. So there's disparate information and it's not fully integrated. So that's really the first dimension. Where we have a lot of companies shifting now is looking at that second dimension, which is where you're starting to build out your job architecture, which means in your organization, you have job families. And within those job families, you've got various different types of roles. So, an example would be like a software engineer, right? You've got software engineers all across your organization, but there are different versions of it. There's a front end engineer, a back end, a quality engineer, machine learning engineer. And each of those may share some similar roles, similar skills across all of those roles, but they also have some differentiated skills. And so, really being able to understand not just, the job that someone does, but what are the skills required to be successful. So, this is really the second dimension is really thinking about skills and a skills based organization. When we get to the third dimension, this is where you start to overlay the company's business strategy and vision. So you're looking at like, who do you have in the company? Where do you have skills gaps? What skills do you need, to future proof your workforce? Um, and this also may bring in other dimensions of information related to location, pay, cost of living. And I think the important thing here is that as leaders are thinking about this, it's no longer what is your 3, 5, 10-year plan. It's where do you need to be 9, 12, 18, 24 months from now? And what are the skills to get there? And so this is really where you get sort of that like more integrated view of workforce intelligence. And then to me, the fourth dimension is really the holy grail. And this is where you start looking at time and the impacts of AI on day to day work. So, as I was saying earlier, it's like what is getting augmented or what's getting fully automated? And how do you get visibility to that so that you can repurpose that time that gets freed up by AI? And this is really thinking about how do you upskill, reskill, or redeploy that talent. And so, this is really integrating task intelligence to really give you that sort of blueprint. And so integrating these dimensions, a company can start to deploy the right talent to the right work at the right time to really ensure that, resilience and agility for long-term success. And, CEOs who fail to adapt this um, will see talent gaps widening and they're going to struggle to stay competitive. And, as I've sort of said, I'm very much about the human dynamic in all of this. And so AI adoption is as much about emotional readiness as it is about technical capability. And so CEOs that understand that will definitely have a competitive advantage.
Yeah, makes totally sense. And thank you for sharing,
Yeah.
your framework, the four dimensions. Um, while you were presenting the framework, I was actually thinking about my personal experience with, clients, organization. They're dealing, you know, with the talent strategy, meaning, okay, what skills do we have right now? What is missing? What's the gap then, and what we're gonna do in the future? And I have two questions. So one is, you say it's not anymore 3 to 5, it's 9 to 10 years, thinking really, from the future.
Yeah.
But given your experience, how easy slash difficult is for leaders right now to figure out really what they need in 9, 10 years time? I know it's a difficult question, but and I know that is the price of a game. The price is anticipating what skills, organization will require, will need in the future. So what's your view about that? And then how can AI can actually help, or maybe it doesn't help, on clarifying what is needed in the future?
Yeah, so it's such a great question, and again, I think the pace of change is what is so difficult for leaders today, and, we are all paving the road together. There isn't a path that we are following. So when we talk about, like, 10 years down the road, an organization should be thinking about that. However, we really don't know what we don't know that we don't
Yes.
know, right? This is a very unique time, but you need to have sort of that, like, longer term vision. And again, it's dynamically changing, but at least have, like, what is our true north today? And then backing into where are we in this moment? Because again, like I said, long-term planning is going to be 9, 12, 18, 24 months from now, right? Because the pace of change is such that we we just can't think that far out. We really have to be agile in um, the way we're adopting AI, um, how we're deploying that talent, and really understanding what are the skills I need today for the organization I have today. Where is the organization going to go? And what are the skills required for where we're going, and how does that map to, again, who do we have today? What is the upskilling, reskilling that we need to get our current organization future proofed for where we're going? And I think this is where, you know technology can help bring visibility to a lot of this. But it's a very dynamically um, changing time where everything is sort of shape shifting on you.
Yeah.
And I think agility and having sort of a startup mindset right now, I think, is really important for organizations, while also considering, um, right, like I said, the foundation of responsible ethical AI and that data governance, so that you really are ensuring, the safety and security of your organization and your people.
Yeah, that's useful. Thank you,
Yeah.
Heather. You're using multiple times, and very for a very good and valid reason. I'm totally with you. The word agility, inside of the corporate world. Uh, Now, for some leaders, the word agility has a very positive connotation, meaning, we're going to be more effective, more agile in the way we work. There will be less waste, more higher productivity, which is really the point of being agile in a very dynamic world. But for many employees, agility actually has a less positive connotation, because their own personal perception about agility is, okay, there is a risk I'm going to lose my job here because AI is going to step in my world, and why don't we clear the air a little bit, and remove the big elephant that is in the room? Meaning, do you feel like the more advancing AI is gonna be for organization, and the more actual organization they're gonna leverage AI, which is the second part of it,
Mhm.
is a real threat for many workers. The impact AI on the future work.
Yeah, so again, I mean, this is the billion-dollar question,
Exactly.
organizations have. And, the reality is there are companies who are using this as a cost takeout. Now, my argument is yes. However, again, as we think about how AI is um, enabling, more efficiency, it's taking away mundane, repetitive tasks. There are things that are innately human that are important when we think about having a human in the loop. And so I think that organizations, and I really challenge CEOs to think about this. And again, this goes back to like, this is not just an IT thing. This is really, for me, about digital workers working alongside humans and what is sort of that interaction. And as we think about the roles of the future, again, what tasks is a human giving over to a digital agent or a group of agents? And what are the things that are human skills that are needed to do that work? And how do we think about expanding someone's role in the future to do more meaningful things? Or again, people do have transferable skills. How do we think about
Yes.
redeploying that talent? And one of the things I really like, I feel very strongly about is, just deploying AI and having your company stand still into who your company is today. The market is changing. And so redeploying talent into the innovation of where your company is and where it needs to go. I think there is a real opportunity instead of just thinking of as a cost takeout. How do you take these skilled workers that you have and help point them at, right, some of these questions that you have for the future? And so you're not losing that continuity and that institutional knowledge. And again, um, AI can only do so much. There really is this need for humans and the human in the loop. And so um, but I think that organizations, some are thinking, okay, I know what my organization does today. I'm going to deploy, herds of AI agents. I'm not going to need as many people, but they're kind of missing the point. And the point is that work as we know it, business as we know it, how work gets done is changing. And so organizations, just the same as people and the work they need to do, need to evolve and shift to where things are going.
Yeah, brilliant. That you answer, a billion dollar question in the best possible way, which I totally appreciate it.
Mm.
Um, let's talk a little bit more about leadership. In an AI driven future where essentially AI becomes part of how businesses are run and how leaders deal inside of the organization with the processes, productivity, and
Mhm.
we mentioned about as well, of course, the workforce, talent, all of that. What different type of leadership is required? If I look at the top leaders, starting from the top, the
Yeah.
CEOs, the senior executives, senior leaders in organization, what kind of a different attributes, leadership models, framework they need to start operating from to make sure the AI becomes a part of the entire ecosystem in the organization?
Yeah, it's such an interesting time to think about what is that makeup of an executive team of the future, and I think of it as not just being AI literate, but, like, being AI native in their decision making.
Okay.
So, CEOs will prioritize leaders who are data driven, yet deeply human. So, kind of as I'm saying, I keep bringing in the human part of this. So, they're leveraging AI insights and still leading with empathy, right? They understand the human dynamic, particularly as the pace of change and disruption accelerate. They're also going to be looking for leaders that are that word that we don't like, agile, change agents. So, they're comfortable navigating that ambiguity and evolving their strategies in real time. And as I said earlier, like again, there is no path that we are following here. We are all paving the road together. I mean, it is such a unique point in time. And, we really need to figure out how to bring others along, right? Not just forcing people to adopt. I mean, the thing that has been so impactful as I talk to leaders and employees is people are in real fear right now.
Mm,
So, and they're kind of suffering in silence because a lot of people are not talking about this. Um, a young woman I talked to said, I feel like I'm digging my own grave. I am creating AI agents that actually do what I do. And then I said to her, I said, "Well, yes, and let's think about the day-to-day work you do and the tasks you do. What are you handing over to a digital agent, and which are the ones that you need to maintain as a human and a human in the loop? And then how do you start thinking creatively about how do you expand on what you're doing today? What are more meaningful things that you can do with time freed up?" So it's really a mindset shift. Um, and then the other thing that CEOs are really going to need are people who are systems thinkers. So those that
mm, yes.
understand AI's ripple effect across all business functions, whether it's operations, IT, customer experience. So, to stay ahead, executives must be, continuously learning, being open to experimentation and embedding AI into all of their workflows. And, CEOs really need to foster a culture where AI is seen as a partner, not as a replacement. So one that like is enhancing human potential and leadership rather than diminishing it. But this is a new muscle for everyone. And the thing that really strikes me with all of this is people need to start talking about this more openly.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of people that are just you know, all about AI. It's the new thing we must do, but we've got to pause for a moment and take a breath and ask people, how are you doing? Leaders, what's happening with your teams? What do we need to do to help train people, get people more comfortable? Because in truth, there are people who mundane repetitive tasks is their security, right? Like that's what I like doing. And now you're asking me to part ways with that and go and do stuff that's not comfortable. So again, it's that change management that the CEOs that get that, it's the technology, the people, and the change management. When you bring all that together, that's where we're gonna see success.
Nice, nice. And um, I think you just shared a very powerful message to those people that today they have a seat at the table, at top table as executive senior leaders. And for some of them, what you're essentially saying is, gosh, that is a potential threat for me because I'm not up to speed of leading, from an AI or at least embracing AI my own way of doing things. So I think that is something there kind of a gap for people to start thinking, how can I intervene in the gap as a leader? Because I know that is coming and maybe I'm not equipped. I don't feel like I know enough. I think it's a great question to ask,
Yeah.
to ourselves in terms of whether we are not equipped, for that sort of massive change is going to happen in organizations. So I think that is a such a great thoughts and idea. And also I would say um you mentioned about looking systemically about the business. I'm a big fan about systemic thinking because
Yeah.
one of the biggest conditions they are actually not allow organization to operate to their best is the silos mentality and the inability for people to think about the whole, so the collective ownership. And I think your message is spot on for what most organizations are facing right now. And then you also mentioned about culture. Now, if we go a little bit more into culture, provided that the leadership has embraced AI, feeling they're owning it, or feeling they're taking decision, taking the best out of the technology. But yet, you have a big organization, if you have a big organization to deal with, an organization that maybe, is tech savvy, maybe, and
Right.
for sure the new generation, and those organizations, they are relatively young, they probably, face less this issue, but there are many other organizations where the tenure is long, is people they are broadly speaking, you know, old, meaning they are, they are anyway. So they are been in organization for decades, right?
Yes.
How can you deal with a culture that potentially is resistant to all of the change that is just coming to them?
Yeah, so many things as you were saying that that just came to mind, and, so one of the things I think is the biggest pitfall CEOs faced is treating AI adoption as just a tech rollout rather than a cultural shift. Because resistance happens when employees feel like AI is happening to them instead of being part of the transformation. And so, one of the predictions that I have talked about is this concept of 360 mentoring. So, it touches on what you were saying about younger employees versus older employees. So, when we think about that younger generation, they are right. They understand AI and they can really help mentor the older generation on becoming AI literate,
Yeah.
and really showing them how to use the technology. Now, the older generation, right, with all the institutional knowledge, can really now help the younger generation, mentoring them
Mm,
on becoming more uh, really understanding the foundational skills that are required because so many young workers are coming in, and a lot of the things that we did right when we were early in our career and we did to learn on the job and to really hone our skills is now being done by AI. And so the older generation is going to have to help bring along that younger generation on some of that foundational knowledge that they're just not getting, as they enter the workforce. And so I think here, um, the key is really transparency and co creation. So leaders really need to communicate what is AI's role, and they need to do it really clearly, not just in terms of efficiency, but in terms of how it enhances work. And again, and how it makes it more meaningful. And they need to involve employees in shaping AI's implementation, ensuring that alignment between being AI driven and company values. So, a really strong AI culture is built on trust. And so the best companies are the ones that are proactively addressing these concerns about job displacement, providing upskilling opportunities, and really creating that environment where employees see AI as an ally rather than a threat. But saying this is not easy. This is a real balancing act, trying to um, navigate again all these different complexities happening all at the same time. So I really feel like the role of the CEO has really changed in just the last year, in terms of all the different things that they're having to think about and navigate with their leadership teams. And one thing I will add to it also is the boards being responsible about what they're asking of their CEOs, because seeing it where I have leaders come to me and with a mandate from their board of, "I've got money, I have to spend it, I have to be bringing AI into my organization." And that's not really the responsible message we wanna hear from a board. I would love to see the board really collaborating with the CEO and the leadership team to think about what does it mean for their organization to bring in AI? How do we get that AI literacy all the way filtered through the organization? How do we do this where we're really thinking about, the human impacts on, the trust, right? Because trust is critically important in an organization. And if employees are in fear, that's taking up so much headspace. It's people are going to be less productive at a time when, right, we need everyone to be really, doing their best work because again, the pace of change is here. And so I think there's, sort of this view of tops down and bottoms up, and how do we really think about creating that organization, that's future proofed. And those are conversations that need to be discussed and well thought through.
and I agree. The role of the board is so important in a
Yeah.
way or another. So I think it's. I'm glad that you actually, included that inside of the conversation because let's face the realities. The board have, in
Yeah.
theory, an important contribution to the future organization.
Yeah.
Now, just talking, from the last words that you use. You said, building a future-proof organization. So, as a final message, I'm interested to hear from you, Heather, is if you are a CEO right now, that you are planning, thinking, and by the way, my audience, our audience here are primarily CEOs, and now after all that they heard so far, and to be very practical, what do you think are two or three key strategies they should really consider to start with and say, okay, I want to make a difference. I want really to have a future driven organization where AI has a massive, major component, major role to play in a positive way. What they really need to start thinking in order to integrate what they're doing with AI.
Yeah, so such a great question, and I think for CEOs, looking to future proof their companies, there's probably 2 to 3 critical actions they need to take. So the first, make AI a leadership priority, not just an IT project. So I had touched on that earlier. And so this means embedding AI into strategic decision making and again, boardroom discussions. So every leader, not just the CIO, should have a clear AI agenda and make sure that it's fully integrated, across and up and
Yep.
down. I think that is really important. I would also say redesign your work for an AI augmented workforce. So shift from that thinking of rigid job centric model to a skills based approach. So this means investing in talent ecosystems, reskilling initiatives, and ensuring that humans and AI can collaborate effectively, right? Managers now are going to have a hybrid workforce of digital and human workers. And so we need to really be prepared for that, again, that AI augmented workforce. And then I think lastly, I would add, to create a culture of AI fluency and adaptability. So, AI adoption is as much about the people as it is the technology. So, building a culture that embraces learning, experimentation, and continual reinvention, to stay in front of this disruption. And, the companies that thrive in an AI era won't necessarily be the ones with the best technology. They will be the ones with the most adaptable leaders and workforce.
Wonderful. And look, by the way, for someone like me that does something different, in
Yeah.
life and at work, meaning I work on leadership performance. Today we had a
Yes.
conversation about AI. What I really appreciated the conversation that we had earlier is whatever we discussed is leaning towards that he's all about leadership. It's how leaders really show up in the AI world rather than consider AI, as you pointed out earlier, as that is an IT project. Let's
Yeah.
deal with that while we're dealing with other things. And
Yes.
the more we embrace AI inside of the way how we lead organizations, the better would be the outcome. And also, I think the better would be for people to appreciate the power of AI versus the threat the AI is bringing. So I think that's his powerful way to end it at this conversation, Heather, which I totally appreciated. Heather, so where people should go if they want to know more about you and your company?
Sure. So I'm on LinkedIn. I always welcome people to connect with me. So Heather Jerrehian on LinkedIn. My website, which talks about my book, Sail to Scale, is just sail like as in sailboat to scale.com. I'm also on X, which is at Jarahian. And those are the ways to connect with me. And I just, Andrea, this has been such a fantastic conversation and really appreciate the opportunity.
No, you're welcome. I think it's been a pleasure and to having you with us. And I think you share some interesting insights. I think you made the entire conversation about AI just better and easier to digest and to understand. So, Heather, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you, Andrea.